Hello and welcome to Mr. Smith History again. So we're going to be looking at the role of the church and how the church influences law enforcement, and we're looking at in particular two aspects: benefit of the clergy and sanctuary. This is following on from the Norman video and the Anglo-Saxon video that you should be able to find in the playlist. So we're looking at around the 13th century, and during this period the church was used to try and convict people who had been accused of moral crimes. So we're not talking about things like theft and murder. We're talking about more things along the lines of sex outside marriage and not following particular religious rules, not following church rules.
Hello.
Oh, hello, we got a little priest there and a little angel and everything. So we're looking at benefit of the clergy. So what this was the church tried members of the clergy, so members of the church, for crimes. So they weren't tried by the king or government or anyone like that, they were tried by the church. And as such they may be more lenient, so it was beneficial for people to try and get tried by the church. But how do you go about this? So to prove you were a member of the clergy, you needed to read a section from the Bible, and it was always the same section. It was Psalm 51, and by reading this section you proved that you were a member of the clergy. Of course, remember, in the time period we're looking at, not everyone could read all right, very few people could read all right, so you would need to have a privileged and sort of rich background or be a member of the church to be able to read in the first place. So that was kind of evidence. But what people did was, to avoid getting hung and to avoid the noose, and it was sometimes referred to as the neck verse, people would simply memorize the verse and pretend to read it out to avoid the more serious punishment they would get in a normal court. So remember, people wanted to be tried by the church because the church was more lenient than the other option, as in the king's court. The church was focusing more on reforming the criminal and changing their ways than punishing them severely for the crime they've committed. So benefit of the clergy is important and significant because it demonstrates that in medieval times the justice system was unequal. It was not equal, and it gave people the possibility and the option to be treated differently. One example of this is the fact that women could not be priests, therefore they were not able to benefit from the privilege of benefit of the clergy. So another way in which the church was important was the fact that they offered something called sanctuary. So sanctuary was protection, essentially protection from the law that was offered to criminals if they went to particular churches that offered this service. A person could claim sanctuary by going to one of these churches, and they would be protected from the law. No harm could come to them. The church would have to report the crime, but no one could go into the church to get the criminals. The accused would then have a choice. They could either go to court and stand trial for the crime they committed, or swear an oath, essentially agreeing to leave the country. And if after 40 days they have not left the country or been to court, they would then be declared an outlaw. Sanctuary there demonstrated, like benefit the clergy, how the church offered opportunities for people to be treated differently, and it sort of demonstrates how unfair and unequal the system was in medieval times. But that brings us to the end of the influence of the church. You can catch up on other videos, including the Anglo-Saxon law enforcement and Norman law enforcement, which will be included in this same playlist. And watch out for the video coming out soon, which will be about law enforcement in early modern England. Thank you very much.